Welcome to r/malicious compliance, where OP tells a patient's mom that the patient and her boyfriend tried to do the devil's tango in the hospital. Complain to me pretending to be a patient's father? Well, let's involve her parents then. I used to work at a very nice private hospital where the place looked like a hotel. The food was great and the service unrivaled. We were voted best private hospital in the country quite a few times, and all around the people were happy and the care was great. The nurses were mostly old school, stern but very passionate about patient care with no time for anything that stops them from doing their job. My job was to focus on marketing and complaints, and to be honest, I didn't have a lot of work on the complaint side, but every now and then, again, something would come up. If there was an incident, the RNs would usually come and warn me to expect something and give their side of the story. One morning, as I got to work, an RN was waiting at my door to update me on an incident the previous night. There was an 18-year-old patient who had a small operation but was prone to dizziness and fainting. Now, slip and falls are a big thing in hospitals, and these incidents get monitored very closely. Since she was a slip and fall risk, they moved her to a private room right in front of the nurse's station so that she can be monitored throughout the day and night. One night, the tattoo-clad, older nurse's description, 20-something boyfriend comes to visit and forgets that this is in fact a hospital and not a hotel. Old school, stern nurse realized something is amiss when the room's doors were closed, and after she pushed the door open, the curtains around the bed were drawn too. Seeing that privacy takes second priority to a patient's healing and safety in a hospital, the old school nurse wasn't having any of this. She pulls the curtains open, pulls the boyfriend out of the hospital bed, and gave them both a talking to. Tattoo boyfriend left soon afterwards, apparently furious that his evening was ruined. Just to clarify that they were doing hanky-panky things in that bed, she made a TLDR that says 18-year-old and boyfriend were caught going at it in her hospital bed. She kind of failed to explain that well in the actual story. Sure enough, 2 hours after the nurse visited my office, I get a mail from the patient's father detailing how his daughter's privacy was invaded the previous night, how she had a private conversation with her boyfriend, and how they were unfairly treated by a nurse. I was surprised that an older gentleman would write an email to a hospital with so many spelling errors and complete lack of punctuation, but the email address, something like tattooguy@gmail.com, was a total giveaway as to who the real author was. Now, technically, I was just about to reply on the email detailing our experience and the side of the story. However, sharing private patient information on an email to an unconfirmed email address is bound to get me in serious trouble. So I did what any sane and perhaps slightly malicious person would do. I called document control and asked them to pull the email address on file for me. This happened to belong to her mom. I forwarded the email to her, mentioning that I received the following email from her daughter's father, but since she is the contact person on file and we need to stick with the people that we have permission to contact, may she be as kind as to share our response with him. I then detailed what the nurse told me about the patient being a slip and fall risk that requires constant monitoring, about the boyfriend visiting, about the door and curtain being closed, and the nurse catching them in the hospital bed together. I apologized on behalf of the nurse for invading their privacy, but explained that the open doors are protocol to ensure a patient's safety, and our main priority is getting a patient safe, healthy, and back at home as soon as possible. I ended the mail with my contact details and invited her to contact me if she has any further questions. Well, if the parents didn't know about the incident, they knew now. I am told the daughter was well behaved for the remainder of the time, and the boyfriend didn't stop by once during the rest of the patient's stay. So, lessons learned. Don't include your parents' details on your hospital file as your main contact details if you don't want them contacted. Don't try and catfish a hospital employee, and respect a hospital for what it is, a place of healing and not a hotel. Man, I wonder how common it is for people to try to hook up in hospitals. Seems like the worst place you would want to hook up. I don't know, maybe some people are into that. Also, what was he trying to accomplish by emailing them? Like, did he expect them to email back, oh, sorry, mister, we'll let your boyfriend have sex with our patient now because you complained? Like, what? I complied and cost my boss his bonus and his job. I'm a corporate professional in middle management. My boss is a senior manager and he's horrible at his job. He got his annual goals sent down from the corporate ether, and naturally he added these things to my list of responsibilities. He would receive a hefty bonus for completing them. I would receive none. He would take all the credit and tell me I was lucky to have him as a mentor. He had this big shot personality. He was a smooth talker that acted like a celebrity, and he was just too important to be bothered by the people lower on the totem pole. He only wanted to interact with people he could brag about, and beyond puckering to kiss their behinds, he spent most of his time at work perusing dating apps. We were a very in-demand group within the company, and we had a revolving door of people coming to our area daily to get help from us. Non-management employees weren't allowed to have cell phones and didn't have access to email, so stopping in was their only option. My boss got furious if I wasn't in my office to catch all the traffic. Completing his goals for him required me to be out of my office. He demanded that I stay in my office for my full shift every single day and accused me of leaving the property and stealing company time because if I wasn't in my office, how would he know I was working? So I complied. I stayed in my office. When his annual review came up, he lost his bonus. Because he didn't meet a single goal for the entire year, he fell under intense scrutiny. It was found that he was using company funds and resources to take those dating app encounters to expensive places and was expensing it as work related. He also used company funds that were meant for a building upgrade to build a new patio at his house. He asked the contractor, a friend of his, to just do the work and find a way to add the money into the company bill. He was promptly fired. It sucks because there's probably so many people in corporate America with this mentality and are getting away with it. The older generation definitely has that "you're lucky to have me as your mentor" type of mentality, and it sucks. It's so stupid. People like this probably rarely get in trouble like they should, so it's nice to hear about somebody who deserves it getting exactly what they deserve. We have to use weed killer on our lawn? Fine. We've lived in this neighborhood for 15 years now. The HOA board, like many, is mostly made up of the grouchy old people who have too much time on their hands. Sometimes it's fine for a while, and then somebody new takes over and has some vendetta to pursue. Our front yard has a few big trees and is thus entirely in the shade. We've tried to plant grass seed a few times, but there's just not enough sun for grass to thrive, so it's mostly low ground cover. No idea what kind, but it's green, and we keep it mowed. For 13 years, this was fine. Then last year, we got a nasty gram from the HOA. We had weeds. According to the bylaws, we needed to prove we were using chemical lawn treatments to kill anything that's not grass. Crucially, the rules don't require us to hire a weed control company, although that's what they expected. We just had to provide proof in the form of a receipt for money spent. My lovely petty spouse went on Amazon and ordered a $6 spray bottle of the most woo-woo new wage homeopathic weed killer she could find. I think the main ingredient was lavender oil. We dutifully spritzed the yard a few times, sent an action shot and a copy of the digital receipt, and thanked them for their concern. The lavender oil, shockingly, did nothing. We didn't actually have to kill the weeds though, just try. We've heard nothing from the HOA since, and the front yard still has almost no grass. I've never understood the concept of HOAs. It's like, why do you care about my house? This is my house. Once again, just sounds like a boomer thing. Boomers gotta care about what everybody else is doing. Mind your damn business. If anything, they're doing them a favor. I'm sure they have the nicest smelling lavender lawn in the neighborhood. Ugh, this is just the level of petty that I wish I could be. So definitely props to your spouse for coming up with that one. Boss punished me by reducing my hours, but didn't tell the other boss. I was working remotely for a staffing agency, organizing and managing events. When I was initially hired, it was due to the fact that 3 employees were quitting. They all seemed to be leaving amicably to pursue other ventures, so I didn't think anything of it. They hired myself and one other person to replace them, and everything was going fine. Over time, I started to notice little things here and there, like issues due to miscommunication between the owners, married couple, and a heavy workload. A few months in, I was assaulted and had been injured pretty badly. I told my bosses I had an emergency and was injured and needed to take time off. Almost immediately, one of the owners called and left an angry sounding voicemail. I called him back and ended up having to tell him I had been assaulted and went to the hospital and all that. He seemed sympathetic, but near the end of the conversation, he noted that I was supposed to be managing an event that weekend, Friday to Sunday, and that they had no one else to manage it. He didn't do any of that, but his wife did. However, we always had at least 5 events we were organizing and managing at a time. I was afraid I would get fired, so I ended up having to work that weekend. It wasn't so bad, but I was in an incredible amount of pain, and due to my injuries, the doctor said they couldn't prescribe me any strong pain medication due to complications that may arise. I worked that weekend and pushed through. Shortly after that, they fired another employee and gave me her workload. Then they chose me to do a very long-running 2+ month event taking place in 2 different time zones. They initially decided the event would be split between myself and another employee. She was pregnant, it matters for context, due to the size of the program. So while I was dealing with being assaulted and healing, took 1 month for my injuries to heal, I was also doing the majority of the workload of this event. I was also having to plan a move, put my stuff in a storage unit, and living in a long-term sublet while I looked for a place. I was also organizing other events on top of that, so there were days where I would easily work 10+ hours. Eventually, the employee who was helping me went on maternity leave, so the whole program landed on my shoulders. One day, I got reprimanded for working overtime. I explained that the workload was heavy, and since I was managing events in 2 time zones, I was having to wake up super early in the morning, 4 a.m., work during the day, take a long lunch, work some more, then wrap up the other event, which ended in the evening, 10:30/11 p.m. They basically told me I needed to manage my time better. Well, I was not doing well mentally or physically, so my cognitive abilities weren't the best. I was making small, easily fixable mistakes here and there, but nothing that was damaging or severely detrimental to the business. There were days I would just sit there crying at my desk. It was awful. Another employee had also been reprimanded for working overtime, and she was as swamped as I was. Eventually, one of my bosses emailed me and said I was still working too much overtime and that he wanted me to work only 5 hours on days where I wasn't managing the big event. I was relieved, honestly. I was looking forward to having more time for myself so I could heal. I made sure to email him back to confirm the non-show management days he wanted me to work 5 hours for the following week. Well, he didn't tell his wife, the other owner, about my new hours, and she had the tendency to ramble about stuff during meetings, making them last way longer than they needed to be. One day, we had a meeting in the morning that lasted 3 hours, and it was the first day I was to only work 5 hours. I didn't even need to be in the meeting, but they forced me to stay and would get irritated if they knew myself or other employees were quietly working while listening to the meeting. After the meeting, the wife sends me messages on asking the progress of some things I was working on. She then added more things for me to do. I told her that I knew I wouldn't have time to finish those things that day because I only had a little over an hour and a half to complete the other tasks I had already been assigned. She had no idea what I was talking about, so I told her that her husband had reduced my hours on non-management days and forwarded her our email exchanges where he confirmed I was only to work 5 hours that day. She got an attitude with me and said, well, these are high priority things and we need you to work on them. You can go ahead and work longer today. I told her I couldn't because I had confirmed a week prior and had made arrangements and was not able to work. So once I hit my 5 hours, I clocked out and put my phone on Do Not Disturb, ignoring all the messages she was sending me. She ended up having to work on all the tasks she had given me late into the night. I continued to follow the new schedule and they just dumped my workload on other employees or had to do it themselves. I eventually got fired because they said that was basically the last straw, but I was so relieved and also got unemployment benefits, even though they tried to fight it. Man, this whole thread just needs to turn into boomers get what they deserve. Bosses like this shouldn't even exist. That whole attitude like, you do what I say no matter what, you're the problem, not me and my business. It's just so crazy that these even exist like this. Please, for the love of God, if you relate to this even a little bit, get out of that situation. Absolutely no job is worth this. Truly, this is so many red flags that either the business is gonna go out of business and you're gonna end up without a job anyways, or even just the fact like when you're applying to jobs, if 3 people are quitting at the exact same time, probably isn't because of personal reasons. Even bigger red flag, 3 people need to be replaced and they only replace them with 2. Glad they got punished. Wish they could be punished more, honestly. Alrighty, guys. Well, that's all I had for you for this video. Make sure to drop in the comments what you thought about these posts. I would love to hear it. Hit that subscribe button. Go watch another one of my videos. I will see you guys next week.